أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome. After 2 years, is it 2 years now? Almost, or maybe more than. Okay. Our first in-person meeting after a long break. Alhamdulillah. So let's resurrect in-person discussion. Inshallah. Inshallah. So it had been a long journey. We started from the first word all the way we came to 28th word. And now we are stepping back to 10th word. 10th word is about resurrection and hereafter. It's about Hashir and Akhirah. So this part of the words consists of two major parts. There's this first metaphor-like introduction, then which is going to talk about aspects, and the author is going to list 12 aspects of belief in resurrection in a metaphorical-like language. This text will require a little back and forth time to time, and also outside of discussion reading is going to be important so that we don't lose the big picture, because individual aspects are going to be studied individually, and some of them are 2-3 pages or more. So we will try to keep it as organized as possible, but after the discussion and before next week's discussion, inshallah, try to read it so that we can keep track of the big picture. This being said, and also as a background, the author, this is one of the first Risale-as actually that he has written, the 10th word. And the way this was written, as they explain, was interesting. So he kept reading verses while he was going, like walking back and forth for hours as they narrate how this was written first. So after reading several verses that from Quran, then he started writing it.
So he was reading verses by walking?
Yeah, by himself. Okay. So by the lake. So he used to go this way, that way, and reading the verses again and again and again.
Oh, you mean reading from the memory?
Yeah,
okay.
Memory for himself. And then, later he says this chapter is like a summary of several verses from Quran. Like at the beginning, he is going to put one verse, but he says multiple verses have been, as he was thinking about that matter, multiple verses were as if flooding into his mind what he says. So inshallah, with that, let's start. And of course, we need to keep in mind that belief in resurrection is 1/3 of Quran. It is one of the 4 major messages of Quran. And in terms of content, if you like roughly speaking, 1/3 of Quran talks about resurrection. So it's a very major part of Quran. And since it's a topic of belief in resurrection, and belief, as we talk about it, having security and conviction. So those that died, nobody came back. So what is your evidence? How can you be sure that life after death exists and I'm going to get resurrected? How can I bear witness to that? Because I can apparently bear witness to it after I die if we take it with the eyes. So how can one be so sure and bear witness that such a thing exists? And maybe before I start anything else, I will read okay, so I'll just read one sentence from page 108 before we start. Okay, he says, "O brother, studying this treatise with an open mind." This is the conclusion of this 10th word. I just want to mention this at the beginning, page 108. Left-hand side, "O brother, studying this treatise with an open mind. Do not say, why cannot I immediately understand this 10th word in all its details? And do not be saddened by your failure to understand it completely. For even a master of philosophy such as Ibn Sina said that resurrection cannot be understood by rational criteria. His judgment was that we must believe in resurrection, but reason cannot aid our belief. Similarly, all the scholars of Islam unanimously have held that resurrection rests entirely on traditional proofs. It cannot be rationally examined. Naturally, so profound and at the same time so exalted a path cannot suddenly become a public highway for the exercise of the reason. But we would offer 1,000 thanks that the merciful Creator has bestowed upon us this much of the path, by means of the effulgence of the all-wise Quran and His own mercy, in an age when belief by imitation is past and meek acceptance has disappeared. For the amount vouchsafed to each of us is enough for the salvation of our faith. Being content with the amount that we have been able to understand, we should reread the treatise and seek to increase our comprehension." So this is just to give a main idea about how it had been in like Islamic tradition, and the author is saying that from the Quran, Quran is actually answering that question not only to our, since Quran says so, it must be true, so level, but also we can reason about that by reading the signs within the creation to be able to confirm the existence of resurrection, like as a matter of
when he says traditional proofs, what does he mean with that? So Ibn Sina taught you can only study resurrection through traditional proofs.
So actually, it was Delail-i Nakliye is the original text.
Okay, so it's more about hadith. And,
yeah, but we believe in it because text says so. Like either we heard it from Rasulullah or we heard it from the Quran, so it must be true. But intellect cannot, or reason cannot go in this path was Avicenna's or Ibn Sina's conclusion. Okay. And it sort of became the main understanding. But the author says in this day and age, such an approach wouldn't be accepted by people because it's imitation or accepting just because is not, I wouldn't be acceptable in this age. And he says Quran answered that question or that need of us in this age as well. And well, it's not going to be easy to understand, he says, because it's apparently not that common to understand it as such. He says, whatever you understand, be content with it, and by rereading, restudying this part, inshallah, try to increase it. So this is the intro. The 10th word. Resurrection.
From the very beginning, right?
Yes, from the very beginning now. The 10th word, resurrection and the hereafter. Note, the reason for my writing these treatises in the form of metaphors, comparisons, and stories are to facilitate comprehension and to show how rational, appropriate, well-founded, and coherent are the truths of Islam. The meaning of the stories is contained in the truths that conclude them. Each story is like an allusion pointing to its concluding truth. Therefore, they are not mere fictitious tales, but veritable truths. And he's referring to the first portion of this text being written in a metaphor-like language. He says, for the reason to write it like this is to facilitate comprehension and to show how rational, appropriate, and well-founded and coherent are the truths of Islam. And the truths of those metaphors will come like 10 or so pages later. Yeah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. فانظر إلى آثار رحمة الله كيف يحيي الأرض بعد موتها إن ذلك لمحيي الموتى وهو على كل شيء قدير. This is Quran chapter 30, verse number 50. Look then to the signs of God's mercy, how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily, he it is who quickens or resurrects the dead, for he is powerful over all things. Rather, if you wish for a discussion of resurrection and the hereafter in simple and common language, in a straightforward style, then listen to the following comparison together with my own soul. Once two men were traveling through a land as beautiful as paradise. By that land we intend the world. Looking around them, they saw that everyone had left open the door of his home and his shop and was not paying attention to guarding it. Money and property were readily accessible without anyone to claim them. One of the two travelers grasped hold of all that he fancied, stealing it and usurping it. Following his inclinations, he committed every kind of injustice and abomination. None of the people of that land moved to stop him. But his friend said to him, "What are you doing? You'll be punished, and I'll be dragged into misfortune along with you. All this property belongs to the state. The people of this land, including even the children, are all soldiers or government servants. It is because they are at present civilians that they are not interfering with you. But the laws here are strict. The king has installed telephones everywhere, and his agents are everywhere. Go quickly and try to settle the matter." But the empty-headed man said in his obstinacy, "No, it is not state property. It belongs instead to some endowment and has no clear or obvious owner. Everyone can make use of it as he sees fit. I see no reason to deny myself the use of these fine things. I will not believe they belong to anyone unless I see him with my own eyes." He continued to speak in this way with much philosophical sophistry, and an earnest discussion took place between them. First, the empty-headed man said, "Who is the king here? I can't see him." And then his friend replied, "Every village must have its headman. Every needle must have its manufacturer and craftsman. And as you know, every letter must be written by someone. How, then, can it be that so extremely well-ordered a kingdom should have no ruler? And how can so much wealth have no owner when every hour a train arrives filled with precious and artful gifts, as if coming from the realm of the unseen?" Footnote: the train indicates the cycle of a year. Indeed, every spring is a carload of provisions coming from the realm of the unseen. And all the announcements and proclamations, all the seals and stamps found on all those goods, all the announcements and proclamations, all the seals and stamps found on all those goods, all the coins and flags waving in every corner of the kingdom, can they be without an owner? It seems you have studied foreign languages a little and are unable to read this Islamic script. In addition, you refuse to ask those who are able to read it. Come now, let me read you the king's supreme decree. The empty-headed man then retorted, well, let us suppose there is a king. What harm can he suffer from the minute use I am making of all his wealth? Will his treasury decrease on account of it? In any event, I can see nothing here resembling prison or punishment. His friend replied, this land that you see is a manuring ground. It is, in addition, an exhibition of his wonderful royal arts. Then again, it may be regarded as a temporary hospice, one devoid of foundations. Do you not see that every day one caravan arrives as another departs and vanishes? It is being constantly emptied and filled. Soon the whole land will be changed. Its inhabitants will depart for another and more lasting realm. There everyone will be either rewarded or punished in accordance with his services. That treacherous, empty-headed one retorted rebelliously, I don't believe it. Is it at all possible that a whole land should perish and be transferred to another realm? His faithful friend then replied, since you are so obstinate and rebellious, come, let me demonstrate to you with 12 out of the innumerable proofs available that there is a supreme tribunal, a realm of reward and generosity, and a realm of punishment and incarceration, and that just as this world is partially emptied every day, so too a day shall come when it will be totally emptied and destroyed. And let me read the first three aspects so that we get into the mood, and then we'll go back to the beginning. First aspect, is it at all possible that in any kingdom, and particularly so splendid a kingdom as this, there shall be no reward for those who serve obediently, and no punishment for those who rebel? Reward and punishment are virtually non-existent here. There must therefore be a supreme tribunal somewhere else. So I'll read this again. Is it at all possible that in any kingdom, and particularly so splendid a kingdom as this, there should be no reward for those who serve obediently, and no punishment for those who rebel? So as if now there's a word, however, reward and punishment are virtually non-existent here. There must therefore be a supreme tribunal somewhere else. Second aspect. Look at the organization and administration of this kingdom. See how everyone, including the poorest and the weakest, is provided with perfect and ornate sustenance. The best care is taken of the sick. Royal and delicious foods, dishes, jewel encrusted decorations, embroidered garments, splendid feasts, all are to be found here. See how everyone pays due attention to his duties, with the exception of empty-headed people such as yourself. No one transgresses his bounds by as much as an inch. The greatest of all men is engaged in modest and obedient service, with an attitude of fear and awe. The ruler of this kingdom must possess, then, great generosity and all-embracing compassion, as well as, at the same time, great dignity and exalted awesomeness and honor. Now, generosity requires liberality. Compassion cannot dispense with beneficence, and awesomeness and honor make it imperative that discourteous be chastised. But not even 1,000th part of what the generosity and awesomeness require is to be seen in this realm. The oppressor retains his power, and the oppressed his humiliation, as they both depart and migrate from this realm.
Could you read the last slide?
The oppressor retains his power, and the oppressed retains his humiliation, as they both depart and migrate from this realm. Their affairs are then left to the same supreme tribunal of which we speak. Third aspect, see with what lofty wisdom and ordering affairs are managed, and with what true justice and balance transactions are effected. Now a wise polity requires that those who seek refuge under the protecting wing of the state should receive favor. I'm rereading it again. Now a wise polity requires that those who seek refuge under the protecting wing of the state should receive favor, and justice demands that the rights of subjects be preserved, so that the splendor of the state should not suffer. But here in this land, not 1,000th part of the requirements of such wisdom and justice is fulfilled. For example, empty-headed people such as yourself usually leave this realm unpunished. So again, we say, matters are postponed for the consideration of a supreme tribunal. So, and it goes on like that. So this is to give the main gist of at least the first portion of it in a metaphorical language. Author is talking about, or it is written as this conversational language between two people, and they are in a paradise-like land. And this is how it goes. So let me pause here, and if you have any comments, any questions, beginning from the very first verse, look then to the signs of God's mercy. So signs of God's mercy, or athar here is like the athar, which is artwork, no.
Artwork, yeah.
Artwork or
Products.
Products. The thing that's left behind. Look at the products of God's mercy, how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily, he it is who quickens the dead, for he is powerful over all things. So, as if the verse is inviting us to look at the signs of God's mercy here and now as a proof or as an evidence for how he restores life to the earth after its death. And this is something that it should be observable, so that verily he it is who quickens the dead. So the resurrection of the dead is being proved by what I observe, by the resurrection that's happening on earth here. Yes, what is your comment, questions?
I have a generic question to everyone here and online. So we decided to study 10th word because we wanted to study the Akhirah, the hereafter, resurrection, let's say altogether. So my question is like a question to myself first and foremost. And I don't know the answer, at least complete answer, but why it is important to study hereafter or resurrection. So at the beginning you read an introduction, or maybe a conclusion, doesn't matter, a paragraph where author says, this 10th word is complicated and this is normal. Even a great mind like Ibn Sina couldn't, let's say, see that the reason can study the hereafter and resurrection, and he was content with traditional proofs, the nakils,
Narrations.
But in our age, in this age, the belief through imitation is gone, and we will study it in more rational ways, like something like that. But my question is, like, do I need this really? Like, what I lose if I simply say, well, resurrection, it must be true because, Quran says so. Or even the questioning resurrection itself, like, do I need to question it? Like, do I need resurrection? So, for instance, the belief in angels, right? It seems to me it's one of, maybe the most important as you get into it. But initially, it seems like it's auxiliary, like the secondary type of belief. Because if you don't believe in angels, it seems, if you take angels as some strange creatures, you wouldn't lose much. Isn't resurrection is the same way? Like, is it really essential to have an understanding? Can't we simply say, oh yeah, there might be resurrection, Quran says so, but we're living this world, this life, so let's concentrate our moment. And I will be a pious person, I will be a good believer, I will pray, fast. Isn't that enough? So why hereafter resurrection is important? And if it is important, why we have to understand it in such details? Well, I think it's a very good topic.
I was just looking at the verse, look then to the signs of God's mercy, how he restores life to the earth after its death. Verily he it is who quickens the dead, for he is powerful over all things. And it made me think of how it's almost as if in order to be convinced of a source of absolute mercy or the presence of absolute mercy, I need the necessity of, like, resurrection becomes a necessity in my life, or some sort of continued existence becomes a necessity, or else everything that I experience here ends up pointing to just a sort of brutal dictatorship, right? In which I feel things, I love them, and then they're taken away from me. And yeah, so I guess that's like something that we experience in our life all the time, but maybe I'll say more about it a little later. I guess what I'm trying to say is part of that is, even in our own lives, we go through something, or like our youth, and then it's taken away, or we have a great friendship with someone, and then that friendship passes. It seems like things that we love, or that we experience, once they are taken away, we feel a sense of like injustice, or how could this be taken away from me? Why am I given a piece of chocolate but not the rest of it? Is it a means of torture? So it's almost as if without resurrection, without that being proven to me, being demonstrated to me in my existence now, I can't even enjoy my life here. And I can't, perhaps most importantly, I can't recognize God's mercy. I can't recognize the actual presence, or I can't be a very conscious or grateful recipient of any mercy that I experience here, because it all seems to kind of leave a bitter taste in my mouth at the end, because I've experienced something, it was wonderful, but now I'm left empty-handed.
Is it like, as long as I am me, which wants always for more, like being the human which always wants for more, having no more is horrible.
About like necessarily all of them, like, you know, wanting more in the sense of I eat and I eat and I eat and I want more, but more in the sense of which is true too as well, but in the sense of if I experience something so beautiful and then feel its abrupt end, then I say, why was I given this beautiful thing in the first place? Then I like it's almost like, oh, I wish I didn't experience it in the first place.
So somebody passed away in our previous lab. The way they announced it was, Tom is no more. So like he used to be, but he is no more. Like he's done, he's over. So I always want for more in the sense that at least, I mean, even if it is at the same level, it should continue. Like I would like to keep experiencing it continuously. So once it is no more, this is what's crushing me. So I would like it to be more. Always, it has to continue, like in the time domain, not necessarily in terms of amount, maybe. I might be content with just my tiniest thing, but death is taking it away. We could have been okay, but as a human, it's not okay.
That's how I find myself.
Yeah.
That's how I find myself. So whoever treated me in this fashion, like I have to that it's just the most sort of consequential conclusion I come to. Like, okay, well, you have to deliver on your promise then. But I guess just what I wanted to highlight here, especially, was just the mercy aspect of it. That, you know, any discussion of resurrection or any discussion of its necessity, to me, it seems, is intrinsically linked to how I experience that mercy right now. And if I can appreciate it, really verify it, acknowledge it.
So I have one question about the verse. The translation says, "Verily he it is who quickens the dead." Is it from another verse? Because I checked the verse itself there. It says, "Verily, just like this, he will give life to them." Why the translation is who quickens the dead?
Is to maybe to bring.
Oh, it's not like make it fast. Okay, that's how I get it. Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment would be relating to question of, why do we have to believe in the hereafter? Why not just be a good person and go about your life? And I think, it relates to maybe the justice aspect. You might be the greatest, person you can be, but you will experience injustice and you will witness other people, not striving in any way to be, have good character and this and that. And I think that'll wear down your own convictions. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is the basis? There's no, to just be a good person. I don't know. I feel like it needs a more solid basis or something strong tying it down. I think belief in, a hereafter, a sort of judgment, that you will be held accountable. That'll help you maintain your focus of conviction. Without that, it's like, why do it at all, right? Why? For me, that's what it is.
So, like, when we take it that way, so at least to me, it seems like, so to come to such a conclusion, you need to look at the creation, see that, the unique judgment and justice, and it is not given in this world, just like author says. But isn't that kind of reasoning or contemplation comes, let's say, isn't that secondary to the life? like when you are living your life, the first thing that you care is whether you are happy or not, whether you are satisfied with your current moment or not. Is the seeking for justice, or seeking for a complete justice, which is not completed here, but he has to be completed there. Is it so essential? Like, can't we just live without it?
Well, I think, if you're facing constant injustice, then maybe that will leave a bigger impression on your psyche than if you're just everything is just fine and perfect. If you're facing some type of oppression or injustice, you would seek a reasoning, a purpose, a motivation behind it.
So when we talk about justice, and I'm trying to also open up the discussion as well. Whenever we talk about the justice and things being perfected in hereafter, so what comes to my mind is, like if we are talking about the people of Palestine, for instance, right? It is easy to have such a discussion. Or if we are talking about poor people who cannot, feed themselves, or being, prison while they are not guilty or something. But for someone like, let's say, her, where she has almost everything she needs, she is fine with her life, at least from an outside look, right? I don't see any, at least for her or for him, I don't see a big deal of justice. Everything is already just for them.
Sure.
Right? They are living happily. There are no big matters that they are looking for resolution and say that, no, it's not resolved in this life, so it must be resolved in hereafter. So again, like such reasoning, it seems, at least at the first, the read, it seems like, yeah, I understand where author is going, but it's like I would live happily if I didn't have this reasoning either. So maybe then, again, there's a possibility, of course, maybe I have a very narrow understanding of justice. Maybe when I say justice, it's all about, the people dying out of, some bombs or the war or some prisons, robbery, this kind of stuff. And that's the only thing I understand from justice. Maybe that's the reason.
Probably. Because he was saying that being obedient to the kingdom versus being rebellious against the kingdom. If the kingdom is being manifest within the creation, and as in the metaphor, he was saying that people are not looking after. You can claim whatever you want to claim. And this is why the empty-headed person was saying that, so it doesn't have an owner. I can use it as I wish. And if I check myself, I behave like this sometimes. I am using things as I wish. And if I claim my hand on it first, it becomes mine. We landed on moon first, moon is ours. We landed on this piece of land, it is ours. And then we start fighting over that. Or I'm not asking Because if it has an owner, then I would ask, oh, how does its owner, first of all, does the owner allow me to use it? If he allows me to use it, how would he allow me to use it? How he wants me to use it? In the absence of any of those questions, I guess, at least based on the line of thought with the text, the metaphor, I am seeming to be abusing things, which means I am in injustice in this regard. So, like, simply think about our day-to-day activities. Even let's talk about reasoning that now we are trying to do. So, do I do now my power of reason as if it is given to me and ask the question, the giver of that, maybe he didn't allow me to use it. Today's khutbah in our Jummah was, there are certain things that you shouldn't be asking about, for instance. Maybe this is the case. The giver of intellect says, I gave it to you, but don't use it. Or is it that he gives it to me, he wants me to use it in a certain way, or how do I use it? And do I use it for the way I want to use it, or I'm going to use it the way the owner wants to use it? So I guess if I'm not having even that question, then that means I might be in injustice in the first place. I might be that empty-headed person. I guess, but how does it affect my life? I guess this is another question. But overall, I think the topic with the death, the resurrection is about death. So death is really, as long as death is there is no mercy. There is even no beauty. Like, if I seriously think about it, me being me, there's no mercy, no beauty, no nothing. I can temporarily say that this is beautiful. I mean, I will temporarily say that it's beautiful, but I cannot say this is really, really beautiful. And this happens to me as I get older, and let's say I am trying to climb the ladders of academia and whatever, and I'm looking for, actually, two professors retired recently. And I remember that professor from 10 years ago, he was gray-headed back then, but now he's purely white-headed. So it gives a very bitter taste in my mouth. Yes, I am looking for him to retire so that the seat gets emptied and I sit there, but I also immediately think about 20 years later, and I said that this person, while retiring, doesn't seem content, doesn't seem happy. I am feeling sorry for him. So then I start feeling sorry more for myself 20 years later. Like, as long as death is there, being a professor is not beautiful anymore. So I don't know, there is no beauty in life. Then. If you think about it, you cannot enjoy anything.
So going back to this justice stuff. So what you said, that, I am using things as I wish, as it, fits to my desire. And I do myself, question what would happen next, which reminded me one of my dreams, which was very influential. There are a few such dreams.
I have a dream.
No, it's not that kind. So I was visiting a place which didn't belong to me with my wife, and we were doing things there, like walking around, taking off some stuff, which didn't belong to us. Like, it was our previous house, right? We were there, but we already moved out from there. Like, in the dream, we knew that. And we were not supposed to be there. But because we either forget something there, or we wanted to take something out of there, I don't remember that part. But we were there, and we knew we were not supposed to be there. But still, we were doing as we wished. Then, after a while, we realized that there are some cameras, and we were watched. Then I start feeling so anxious. Like, I can still remember the feeling, like it was so real. And I'm feeling so anxious that I'm watched, and I'm doing things that I'm not supposed to do. and there will be some consequences. I was sure about it, and I started to be anxious about it. So I guess the same way, when we only look at the way we live, the moment we realize, as the wise man in the story realizes, the moment we realize there must be an owner, and the owner has telephones. In his example, it's a telephone. In my example, it's the cameras, right? And so have access to everything.
Agents.
Yes, agents. So he knows what is going on. When you realize that, you start questioning the way, the manners in which you act. And then you know that there must be some consequences of your actions. Because you are in a place that which don't belong to you, you know that, but you still act as if there is no one watching over you. So I guess this feeling is the injustice, like one type of injustice, at least, that we experience. So my actions are not just. The way I treat people, the way I treat my book, the way I treat my water tap, like for instance, if I'm washing something and I keep it on for no reason, sometimes I don't care, but when I realize, I feel sorry, because it's not justice, it's not just to waste the water, let's say. Or the way you play with your son. If you are, I don't know, overprotective or underprotective, you know that there's an injustice there. You know it. But when, at the moment that you realize that you have some responsibilities, that you have some duties to follow, that it's not left, or he's not left by himself to anyone to claim and steal. When you realize that, the injustice is not necessarily about falling bombs or the non-working justice system that send you prison or anything. It is about your actions, or similar way the others' actions. If they are not treating you properly, it's an injustice. So I guess, like this sense of consequence, sense of something is waiting for me, is there. And then the next question, as author suggests, is whether we see these consequences here or not. And if we don't see the consequences, the results taking place in this world, I guess we have a right to question and why I have such a feeling of responsibility. In Quran, as the resurrection is such a common theme, especially whenever messengers are mentioned, there is almost always, if not always, the people have denied resurrection. And all the transgressing nations that are mentioned in there is transgressing and denying that there's a resurrection. So all those injustices are happening, as in the story, the person was saying that, so there is no prison in here. Or the king, if suppose the king exists, so what would happen to the king if I just do some small, take something for myself? It's just tiny and unimportant. So
So there's this not realizing what sort of an injustice I am capable of doing. And as you suggest, considering only a fraction of things that I can do as injustice or as a topic of justice. And then the rest, I am totally free, as if it's mine or it's nobody's. Like, even if I don't claim it to be mine, I claim it's no one's. So this is all combining and leading to. So apparently, my ego wants to be independent and behave as it wishes. And the best way for that is there's no consequence, there's no regulation. So these are all, because I'm trying to see why the author is depicting this empty-headed man the way he did. Like the conversation is having a certain shape. It is defining or showing the mindset of why would I deny resurrection? What is my gain in denying resurrection? And in the opposite, what is my gain from? Because your question was, what is my gain if resurrection exists? So I guess in the opposite, what is my gain if I deny it? So apparently my ego wants to get this freedom of, I want to use it as I wish, there is no consequences. So
So there's small things that we mention about ourselves, like we do this kind of injustice, that kind of injustice. And when we look even deeper, we will see, I guess, let's be honest, like we sometimes do terrible things. And even if it's not Yusuf, for instance, again, let's be honest, there are really terrible people out there. So I guess it's not hard to see that the injustice, or let's say incomplete justice, is so common. I mean, look at the economical system we live in. Look at the distribution of wealth, or how people treat each other, or nations treat each other. So I guess it's like somebody must be really naive to think that, oh, I have everything I need, so I don't, face injustice that much, because it's so common. It's really so common. Like in your workplace, you will see how people treat each other, how people, like, what are the, let's say, the criteria for being valuable or being a loser. You will realize that it's not just the way you have to save your money, the way you have to buy yourself a house. It is not just. So it's so common, I guess. Again, like, yes, it starts with yourself. You are the first addressee of such a blame that you are acting unjust. But beyond that, I guess, there are really clear and heavy examples of injustice everywhere.
So in the example, in the metaphor, he was saying that everybody left their doors open.
I was just reading the same word, yeah.
So, like, if, for example, brother here left his wallet open, and I just go and take the money out of his wallet. So
I mean, you will see consequences in this work as well, I promise.
So, or even just if he leaves some candy over there and I take away the candy, so it doesn't really matter. But there's this, as long as the ownership is there, I would say, I would expect some sort of a return back, or I am benefiting from sun. Like in the morning time, I go to work, I benefit from sunlight to see the street that I am walking. And especially when I step outside of the workplace, which is too cold, I enjoy the heat of sun even in the summertime. And for free. It doesn't have an owner, so I claim it and I enjoy it and I just say, however. Or today I was reading somebody's some writings. He was mentioning meat consumption and whether we are going to eat lab grown meat soon or whatever.
I prefer broccoli. Rather than this fake meat, I prefer. I'm happy to become a vegetarian, but not happy with this fake meat.
Like eating meat, for example. Yeah, we are over consuming meat, and it's because of this, and that, all the balance is gone. Like the balance in creation is violated because of our unjust eating behaviors. But then, who is the owner of the meat? I pay for the goat, it becomes my goat, and I can eat it as I wish. So all those doors are left open. Nobody is paying attention to the property. And because of this, I feel like, oh yeah, this is why it is not belonging to the state, but it is endowment, meaning it doesn't have a designated owner, so I can use it as I wish. But then the wise man says, could it really be like this? Like you are entering a place which is super valued and everything, and nobody's paying attention to it. This is why you think that although everything is so precious and so valuable, since nobody is knocking your head, you really think that it does not have an owner, or is there another meaning behind that?
So on the same line, again, just to open up the discussion. So isn't it a marginal thinking that the things have owner and you have to be respectful? Because as author says, when we look at the creation, the system that we experience, it really looks like the doors are all left open and you can take as you wish. So I guess this is our default reaction when I say, if I criticize you, for instance, for the amount of meat that you consume, which a lot, so your first reaction would be possibly, what, I paid it, like I paid for it, and I'm earning my money legally, and the animal is there. So there is nothing preventing you eating that much meat. Or even you go, further, and let's say I'm criticizing the financial system. You would say, our first reaction would be, but it is built upon some rules. There's a law. As long as people are acting not against, by the law, if they're acting by the law, then you cannot criticize. Like, it is there and they are taking it. How can you, criticize such an act? It's our first reaction to such, I guess, questions. You are not doing anything illegally. It is there, nothing preventing you getting it from there. So if you seed an apple tree, apple tree comes and then apple comes out of it, and you eat it. There's nothing more to think about it. You bought the seed, you bought the land from the previous owner, and then you are just enjoying. So just like Otto said, like it is really open door, and no one is paying attention to guarding it. There is no guard. So why should I be worried about it? And this is I think the mainstream mindset, right? Nobody is questioning the financial system, or nobody is questioning the social construct, how we act each other, how we treat each other, how we treat the animals or the fruits or the land, unless you acting wickedly. Nobody's questioning. So isn't then such a question that author is posing, for instance? How can you think that it doesn't have an owner? How can you think there will be some consequences and so on and so forth? Isn't that a marginal question?
I don't know if it's marginal, but I don't know if marginal is the right word, but is it that am I imposing a human attribute to the existence? Is this how it would be? As a yes, if I would own this, definitely I would protect. But I don't see an owner. So why do I think there has to be an owner? I guess this is because if there would be an owner, then yeah, what you said would happen. But I don't see an owner with my own eyes. This was what the
exactly.
attribute of the man was. I don't see an owner in here.
Well, they do. Okay, so let's be careful with the word owner. So I guess it's easy to say that, oh yeah, everything was created by God or by something. So you can take him as the creator, but you don't necessarily take him as the owner. So I think there's a distinction there. And the question here is about the ownership. Meaning, yes, he created everything and then just he left it open to everyone who claimed. Right? So questioning the ownership is not necessarily questioning the creatorship. So when I say, the plant or animal doesn't have any owner, so when I say an animal or plant or anything doesn't have any owner, I'm not necessarily claiming that it happens itself or it was created by something else. I might be well accepting that there must be a God who created things, but then he left the door or his door and his shop open, and he's not guarding it, and then I can use it freely.
So I think maybe as it is done over there, maybe we should put them into layers then. Because I feel like once accepting that there is a maker and at least an initial owner, the one who made initially is the initial owner, it is getting harder to accept that he let it go. But even in the first place, do I impose that there must be a maker? Like, because this is very initially we start rejecting it. This is the easiest way to escape from everything, right? So no, it just happens by itself. There's no maker, whatever. Because even the idea is, oh yes, if there's a certain shape like this, yeah, it is must be made by someone, but aren't you just imagining a human-like wise one who made this? Like this sort of a thing, projecting myself, imagining myself to be the owner of this, and then imagining that a maker must exist.
And you are holding a toy for online participants.
Yeah.
What does ownership entail that makership does not?
Oh. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
What I was saying, what does ownership entail that makership does not?
Okay, I see. So you might be making things and then just, living it. So for instance, I used to own a furniture and I put it downstairs with a label on it saying that free, take it. So I made it, let's assume I made the furniture. But then I don't care who takes it, how he or she uses it.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying like in terms of my practical engagement with creation, and I recognize that something has a maker versus concluding that it also has an owner. How does then my relationship with that creative thing change? Because I feel like there's a lot of overlap in terms of once I conclude that something has a maker, my attitude towards it is, I mean, at least in terms of how we discuss a maker, a creator, it's all about acknowledging. Maybe we also implicitly implied ownership there. I'm not sure, but like I'm thinking, and maybe that's the very topic, but what variation or change in attitude is there that ownership brings into the picture? That makership, when we talk about it, is not.
Maybe is it that nowadays conversation is more about denying the makership, but the emphasis about maybe at least more religious mind nowadays is like, oh yeah, with the Big Bang there had been a maker, but now it's acting by itself, like putting a distance between the maker. The maker made it at some point, but not owning it anymore. So is it that the owner, maintainer, constant maintainer is then becoming this one with the cameras watching over? Because otherwise, as I put this, as if like, just taking it as the maker puts him distant in time, like he's far away. But owner is more like a, I mean, if you take maker as an ongoing, making as an ongoing action, it is the same thing. Like this baby is being made anew, I am being made anew, so therefore making equals the owner. But in general, our perception is mostly done, and then now I can play with this. So this distance component makes us that it's okay, it's forgotten. And I guess this is how it is being given in something that I own for many years. Like they are not as fresh, and even they're becoming more dispensable. Even if I bought something, let's say a cloth that I liked so much and I wear it for so many times, but now I got accustomed to it so much that if it gets dirty, it becomes my work cloth. So even that's, it's getting far away from me. So in this sense, I guess, and this is why this having the ownership ties alive serves as this idea of cameras and agents being there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also thinking in terms like, so when I determine that something has a maker, I can conclude that I am given it, right? I am a recipient of it. And then when I conclude that it has an owner, then I conclude that I do not determine its, I think it has a lot to do with the ego as well. I do not get to determine my nature of interaction with this, right? So, my body, it's given, but I do not get to determine how I use it. Or I don't get to use it in my own, or a baby's given, but I don't get to determine how to interact with it on my own terms. And this goes back to what Brother Ricardo was saying about injustice, right? I don't get to determine how to interact with a flowing water, even if it's a river, right? I think they made a hadith about that. Even if it's a flowing river, it's not about the fact that it's a flowing river that's supposed to have no end. And I would say, oh, there's no waste if I just use this as much as, because that's, within our own perhaps secular terms, we'd say, oh, there's no waste. It's a river, it's flowing. But there I'm told, no, I don't determine what is a waste. I don't determine what is, let's say, even not a waste or frugal. I am given commands on how to interact, and my point of reference cannot be myself in my interaction with all that is created by the maker, because he is also the owner. That's kind of what I'm getting. And that then means putting things in their place or acting justly when I don't take myself as the point of reference for action or behavior or approach.
From your initial question, one of them was about justice, but the other one was about what's wrong with simply saying, yeah, I believe in resurrection and whatever. So,
Because Quran says so.
yeah, because Quran says so. How about that? Like, what is insufficient about this? Or is there anything wrong with that?
So, to be honest, like I don't have strong feelings when it is said that because what you are doing is just imitation and or blind belief. When I realize that I have a blind belief, I don't react too strongly, to be honest. I don't say, oh, in this age, I cannot have a blind belief or I cannot imitate things. I have to reason, I have to understand. So if we are talking about ourselves, this is not my attitude. Of course, it changes if we're talking about the others, how we reach to others, how we, explain things to others. This is another topic. But if you are looking at ourselves, I know that I have a lot of unjustified, true or not true beliefs. And I'm happy with that. Unless, I realize this one of these unjustified beliefs poses a big trouble in my life. So the answer to such a question, at least to me, cannot be that, oh, Birkan, because you have to understand or you have to reason because, as an educated man or as a person of this age, you have to do that. This is not an answer to me, to be honest. So there must be a reason. If I don't do it, then it will harm me one way or another. So, for instance, I eat my food in a certain way, and there is no justification to it. I eat it that way because it's my culture. And I have no problem with this. I don't have any reason to change it. So the same way, if my belief in resurrection, for instance, if it is because Quran says so, and if I'm happy with this, meaning such a belief doesn't have an a big importance in my life, then I would say, yeah, that's okay.
So is it then about, then two questions comes to mind. One is, I guess this was the first question. What is the importance of belief in resurrection in my life? And this, then I guess the second one becomes an easier question to answer in this light. In the absence of a strong conviction about that, and if someone comes and like, since I'm taking it not that strong and I'm a little light about that, and brings up some, like, pays me more. Like, pays me more.
Okay.
Because everything has a price, and there is more of a reward coming from somewhere else. And maybe if you pay me like $10,000, you are not going to change my mind. You cannot change my mind with $100,000, but if you pay me $1 million, things would change. So is it then that my convictions are important for being steadfast if the matter is important about my life? If it is not too important, yes, like it depends. The price is, everything has a price. This is what a brother was saying. Everything has a price. Like every, if in a sense, if you are going to get into a sin, let it be paying good in this realm. I guess then it becomes, what's the importance of resurrection?
What is at stake?
What is at stake? Yeah. Like if, like this retiring professor, if I come to that white-haired age, and if that white-haired professor tells me that, oh, the worries that we have right now are irrelevant, and if only, I mean, that's generally what they say, and still we don't do. Let's say, seeing my son at my hand, if you were to say, forget about all those worries, go home and enjoy your time with your son, for example. This is something that's not accessible for that person. This is why he now can appreciate the importance of it. So, but once it's gone, so is it? And you can still say, well, it's just playing with your son, not a big deal. But once this life is lived in the wrong way because of lack of that conviction in resurrection, and then I lost all my capital. And it's not only that I lost them, and well, I'm just at zero, but not only that, I am full with regrets. And like I'm in debt to the, what's it, firm. So then I think it matters. So if being convinced about this matter is going to save me from that regret, which is not happening, which is not like, oh, at the 70 I realized that regret. No, not only that, but down the road that regret just keeps growing, then I think it becomes important. And in this age, just saying that Quran says so, so it must be true, is being something that I can quickly forego. Anything more comes, such as somebody just appreciating me or flattering me, is becoming an easier way to change my ways, I guess. So this is why I need a strong conviction, which is going to stick with me. Because in this age, especially in this age, look at the Muslim world, look at the value of Quran in the eyes of the society. Like, it's true because Quran says so, is consider the value of this in the average eye, and whether I would be able to even pronounce such a thing in the university classroom. I will forget about in front of professors, in front of the undergrads that I mock during the class time, in front of them. It must be true because Quran says so, versus it must be true because such and such professor says so, or it must be true because science says so. Which one can I comfortably say? In front of undergrads with all my degrees and titles and comfort. So I think this tells a lot about how I can quickly change my mind about going after it must be true because it is said so.
So I guess then the problem is not whether whether it is so the conviction through reasoning or through investigation effective. So we are choosing it, or author is choosing that in this text, not because he thinks it is cool or it is better, but because it's a necessary now. So even if we try, we cannot do without it. If, for instance, I was content by, so I need resurrection, I need hereafter, and if I'm okay with believing hereafter, simply because I need it, and there's a reliable resource that says it is there, it exists. If I was content with that, I guess there was no discussion on whether I should, study it or not, because truly I wouldn't need to study it. So, for instance, one author gives this example of Ibn Sina. So I think, I might be wrong, but this is how it seems to me. I think Ibn Sina at his own age was doing something right. Like he didn't need anything further. Not because he was a bad believer or something. At this time, in his society or in his condition, he was able to live contently with such a belief. But for myself, as you said, even if I try it, there are all these different the other, the claims and ideologies constantly attack me. So my such belief that, the hereafter is there because Quran says so or Prophet says so wouldn't stand. And it does not stand. So I'm constantly having these questions and again questions and again questions. But again, if the other one is working, then I guess it is working, that's all. It's not a matter of which one is better, which one is worse. It's a matter of which one is working and which one is not working. So maybe another thing about, so the discussions are 1 hour and a half, right, by the way? So, okay, we will end in 2 minutes. So another aspect of maybe this text is the dialogue between the two. It's in a way that the wise person does not say things like, don't be stupid, this is the reality, or don't be stupid, this is the truth. But rather he says, don't you see? Don't you understand? Don't you feel? Don't you realize? So as if the criterion for assessing the truth is with you. So even the foolish guy has the required faculties to realize what is true and what is wrong. Because the other one says, don't you see? Don't you understand? So when we say, for instance, that there must be an owner, and the owner clearly demonstrating his treasuries and trying to say something, this is not an external idea that, when accepted, makes sense. But rather, this is an idea that it's already with us. Because there are certain things in life, especially when it comes to mind and reason, that you don't have them, they're not with you, but when somebody explains, it makes sense. And you say, oh yeah, it makes sense, it's a great idea. But you would be okay without it. Or if somebody else wouldn't explain to you, you wouldn't realize it. There are such things in life, especially in the academia. If you come and explain me some theorems about the graph theory, let's say, I would say, yeah, it makes sense within the context of graph theory. But since I don't care about the graph theory, it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. But when it comes to these examples and discussions, it's something else. It's not about, so when we say reasoning, it's not necessarily purely theoretical and true within certain systems or within certain contexts. So your theorems, for instance, would be true only within the context of graph theory.
If it is your problem.
And if it is your problem. Or she can give me some philosophical frameworks, and in these specific frameworks, she says this is true, this is not true. And probably it will be true. Whatever she says true is true. But so what? Right? But in this discussion, when author says, don't you see, or don't you feel, don't you know, don't you understand, it's as if like what we're talking about is already with you, and it is part of your life. You experience this injustice. You experience this incompleteness of things. You experience the order. And order tells you something.
And he also said, because of you, we are going to get into trouble. So that was also important. Like, why are you messing up with me? I'm just doing it myself. If I am stealing, I am stealing. I'm not stealing it from you. I am stealing it from, let's assume, suppose such a thing.
Yeah.
And there's no prison in here. And if I'm stealing it from you. Why are you just imposing your ideas to me, sort of attitude, right? So, but that response is, it sometimes happens that because of one, what did he say, like criminal or one rebellious person, the entire, an entire city gets punished. As if, I mean, of course, it's a metaphor, but if a child would be here, or let's say Zainab, is shouting, rebelling against the idea of order, of how an orderly discussion would be. And if she says, well, whomever is the owner, I'm just shouting what's up to you. But that injustice that is being made in there is affecting everyone. So it's not like it's between me and God and what is it to you. Somebody's injustice in this regard is propagating. This is what I am saying. Or is it the case? Is the injustice that is being made in this regard propagating? So I feel like it doesn't stay there. Like if it doesn't stay, since we are human, our injustice. So it doesn't stay there. Like once I start wasting, once I start mistreating someone, then I can mistreat anyone. So what would prevent me if I am mistreating my son? What would prevent, and if I see it okay, and it's an injustice to the owner of my son, what will prevent me from mistreating my wife? What will prevent me from mistreating Ati? So once it becomes a norm and okay to me, so I can mistreat anything. And actually, we see this at the scale of humanity. Because humanity used to think much less things okay 100 years ago. Nowadays, almost everything is okay, which was not okay 100 years ago. So, and society is made up of individuals. So this injustice is spreading. It doesn't stay there. So this is why that wise man should be bothered about me being unjust. Because my injustice is going to affect that other person.
The same way, a tiny injustice in you will affect your entire life, will affect all other faculties as well. We should stop here. You are the moderator.
Any other questions, comments? سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا